You are listening to Armchair Healthcare, a podcast on pills, placebos, and policy.
All right, so welcome to Armchair Healthcare. So, Max, Biogen.
Yes, Biogen, big bad Biogen. They and their partner Eisai released data on BAN 2401 in Alzheimer's, and the original press release was relatively positive and was guiding people towards good data.
Mm-hmm.
But what we actually saw was really not good data. It was like your typical phase 2 Alzheimer's data release. So they tested 5 doses. Only one of them actually showed any difference from placebo, and that one had like a massive baseline imbalance with ApoE4 positive patients, where 70% of the placebo arm was ApoE4 positive patients, but only 30% of that one dose that worked was. And, you know, this is a subgroup of patients where they are known in the literature to progress faster.
And to be clear, this imbalance was because some regulator was worried about the rates of edema in these ApoE patients, right?
Yeah, so they didn't do it on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But you could see that, you know, when you look at the data, that this has a very high chance of having driven the data. For the trial as a whole, the ApoE4 composition was balanced with placebo and the treatment arms. So with the other doses, there was probably much closer to placebo, and you saw very little difference.
And for the record, I would have been, oh, this seems like maybe something is here. Nothing's really in Alzheimer's space, except I've seen this like how many times now? Like this data just looks so similar to what we've seen before in phase 2. And we've seen these levels of effects like, 44%, or this one I think was 47% difference in ADAS COGS. Yeah, that's happened before, and it just deteriorates from here. It's just going to get worse.
Yes, but, you know, on that number, they didn't actually give us the absolute differences.
Mm-hmm.
So if you actually saw a chart, it might look like they barely moved. I mean, you don't really know what the underlying data was.
Yeah, it could be 1 point.
What kind of annoyed me the most of this data release was how these very large companies were acting like bioturds.
This seems to be the new normal. I feel like this has been happening more and more. Where it's all spin nowadays. Like everyone seemed to dump their news yesterday.
Yes, like Sarepta's clinical hold.
Yeah, and Gilead's CEO retiring. I mean, that's always going to be news.
Well, Gilead had their earnings scheduled then, so
I guess
that was
so,
legitimate.
yeah, that's a good point. Back to Biogen.
You know, one thing they did do, so they did present part of the slides to the press before the actual presentation, which is something I don't really understand how this is. I mean, this is insider information. And these, you know...
They brought them inside. That's okay.
I guess so. But, like, they've written the articles, so there's all these people who are now brought inside within the organization.
Yeah, it's because they want to control the spin on it. So, I mean, do you remember on Twitter just the number of journalists who are saying, oh, this seems pretty encouraging. Those are some big effects. Right? Until, like, everyone else is like, oh, but ApoE is unbalanced.
Well, no, but Damien from Stat News, I remember, he pointed out this one slide that was in the presentation that was not in the presentation he'd seen earlier. Biogen did not show them the slide, which showed that for a lot of the doses, they actually did worse than placebo.
Well, they weren't... They worse numerically, as they say now, numerically worse, but statistically insignificantly different.
Yeah, but it was not an encouraging slide.
That stuff doesn't. I'm not trying to defend them, but to be completely honest, that stuff doesn't bother me so much as a total statistical pedant that I am. Because if it's not statistically different, I mean, you really don't expect drugs at very low concentrations. Like if you had 1 atom of this drug, it would probably do nothing. So there is a point at which you can detect a difference as you increase the dose.
Unless you're a homeopath.
Then it would work wonderfully. All bets are off. But luckily, that's not the space we're dealing in right now. We're dealing with a drug. Now, what it did show, pretty dramatic drop in amyloid, right, as detected by PET tracers.
Yeah, so if the amyloid hypothesis is true, then this drug should work really, really well.
Well, I've got a new hypothesis for you, Max.
What's that?
It's that the amyloid hypothesis is wrong. It's just a guess. I'm going on a limb here.
Mhm.
I'm just going on the limb that like a whole bunch of people in basic science have been going on for a long time. It's not going to work, guys.
Well, I mean, I think there is some hope for this drug. I believe if they go after the ultra-orphan pediatric Alzheimer's population, they might get it through the FDA. You know,
Well, the good news is I should be, with any luck, be able to buy this one on the cheap for Pyramid
Oh, yeah.
Biosciences.
Perfect.
Yeah, like $4 or $5 million, and we can just find the right subgroup.
Yeah, but we're gonna have to wait a few years for that one. It'll have to first fail phase
Everyone's
3.
got to like forget about this one a little bit, and then we'll reignite it, and bring it back.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to toot my own little horn because I feel like I was proven correct when I was trying to analyze last time on the podcast about why their Bayesian analysis failed and they succeeded on the traditional analysis, even though Bayesian tends to be more forgiving, which goes to what you were just saying about these earlier arms all showing no effect or maybe a little bit worse than placebo, which is what I thought, right? The only way you're going to get this Bayesian analysis to fail is if all the earlier data is all dragging it down and making it look like more and more like your drug isn't working at all. I think I called that one correctly. Thank you.
Yes, you did.
Thank
Let's
you.
do a little
Thank
golf
you.
clap.
Yes, thank you.
And so all your statistical questions, please send them to Nat Calloway.
Yes, and be sure to include your favorite adjustment for multiple comparisons. Thank you.
That's actually a very important point. Continuing on the Biogen data, I mean, they did get statistical significance sort of with that one dose. That p-value was not adjusted for multiple comparisons, and did first fail with their initial statistical plan, and then they tried a more standard method.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't know how many others they've tried. So they might have tested it in like 10 different things, like Cox regression, what have you.
Wilcoxon, yeah.
But we don't know. They could have literally tested in 10, and they came out with p-values from what I can remember around like p of 0.017 or 034.
Or at least it was a two-sided t-test, right?
I don't think they went
Okay.
that far bioturd by doing a one-sided.
Okay, good. So to say the least, I think we're a little bit lackluster on this data. We're skeptical. I'd say we're skeptical.
We're realistic.
realistic. What probability of success would you give this one?
Probably about 0.01%.
0.1%. Okay, that's pretty small, Max.
Last time I looked, there have been around like 250 or 300 Alzheimer's trials in the last 10 years, and one of them has been successful.
Mm-hmm. So if you're doing a Bayesian analysis here, the priors all suck.
Pretty much. Continuing on the Alzheimer's subject, in our previous podcast, we talked about the prospects for an early stage Alzheimer's diagnostic, and we were pretty, realistic or conservative about that. But one of our listeners did point out a study that was in JAMA Neurology, published just last month, about the association of retinal nerve fiber layer thinning with current and future cognitive decline. They had some really interesting results. Apparently, it doubles your risk of cognitive decline if your retina has gone thin enough.
This is actually pretty interesting to me. I don't know how we got to this, because presumably if you've got neurons dying in your brain, you might have them dying in your retinal nerve too, I guess.
Yeah, and the retina is, I guess, the only part of this CNS that we can actually see. This could be something that makes sense and could work.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to really help anything if you can't really treat it, but I guess that's the idea. We want to get these people early as possible to prevent cognitive decline, because no one's expecting any reversals anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't know what you can actually do, but at least you're more prepared for it. Maybe you'll create a support system so that when things do start to decline, you're just more ready to help them.
Mm-hmm. You can start growing your clone.
How does that help you?
Well, you just download your brain into the clone.
But that's not your brain. It's a copy of your brain. So there's someone out there thinking they're you. That's why I'll never go into the Star Trek transporter, guys. That's never going to happen. It's just a copy of me thinking they're me. convinced they're me.
All
But it's
right,
not me.
This would involve a discussion of the human soul and whether it exists or not.
No, it has nothing to do with the soul. It's not. I'm not thinking my soul's there, but my consciousness is in this body and it's dead. And then there's just another one that's a copy of me running around thinking it's me.
But really, as far as I'm concerned, I don't care.
Yeah, you do, because you.
I care about me. I don't care about you. If I just have a clone, Max, I could. If we had a clone of each of us, we could make this podcast every day.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I mean, it's just useful. So yeah, interesting paper. And where is it published?
In JAMA Neurology.
Cool.
Yeah, so that was interesting, and apparently it's been kind of kicked around for quite a while, since like 2006. This theory.
It's better than brain biopsy.
I think much better. Yes.
All right, what else you got, Max?
I don't want this to be an Alzheimer's podcast like every week, but we talk about it every week. It's been
Well, it's what's relevant right now. Like literally, this Biogen stuff came out just a little while ago and we're talking about it because it's current. Everyone's talking about it. People won't shut up about it.
Anyway, so this group called USA Against Alzheimer's has a report called "The Current State of Alzheimer's Drug Development." And John Carroll at Endpoints pointed out one of the top pipeline products. I mean, these people didn't judge them. They just kind of made a list of what's in the clinic, what's most advanced. And, this is probably one of the problems with Alzheimer's. The number 2 product in the clinic for Alzheimer's is ginkgo biloba.
Hey, Max, there are lots of natural products that have pharmaceutical efficacy.
That is very true.
Taxol comes from a tree.
Yes, we've gone through that. Anyway, how many times and we've talked about this before, these companies, try to make some sort of vitamin or some weird natural product into a drug, and then it just doesn't work. It's like because it's all been kind of like anecdotal folktales for thousands of years.
Yeah, but if you run one of these clinical trials, and this is probably the reason why they're running one of these clinical trials, this might be a supplement, and they might want to actually make some claims about stuff, right? So, I mean, if you run enough clinical trials and you do them, quote unquote, the right way, you can prove a lot of stuff, which is why the turmeric industry has run so many clinical trials and the pomegranate industry has run so many clinical trials. I mean, I believe Cheerios has run clinical trials to prove that their cereal lowers cholesterol. You know what I mean? Because they advertise that in every freaking commercial.
You just advertise it that it tastes good, especially Honey Nut Cheerios. Those are great.
No, Cheerios are pretty good. Yeah, you're right. If you're listening, Cheerios, call me.
Beyond ginkgo biloba, which, okay, who knows, maybe it'll work, but there's other stuff on this list that's just, it's not going to work. Like, for example, they have Ambien on this list as one of the top, I would say, 10 pipeline products for Alzheimer's. So I guess if they're asleep, you don't realize they're senile?
Yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
And they also have, methylphenidate on this list, which is Ritalin. And we talked about this, I think, in our first podcast.
Yeah, that's got a better chance of working, I think.
Yeah, give everyone speed.
They'll stimulate them.
Yeah.
Right? I think they need a little bit of stimulation instead of a little bit of knock you in the pants, knock you out.
I mean, the problem with like Alzheimer's drug development is because it's such a huge market, it's like, if this works, it will be huge. And so people are just try everything. I mean, I saw one company was using ketones. And I think it was like a mixture of like palm oil and coconut oil that they were giving people. Of course, it failed, but it was failed in like a late stage. This is funding that could go to like something better.
Well, as long as it's not my money they're spending.
It's true.
What was the number 1 most advanced? You said ginkgo was 2.
Yeah, so number 1 was plasma exchange with albumin and immunoglobulin.
So that's taking the blood of the young and infusing it into the old. This is some like vampire like horror stuff.
Yeah, or post-apocalyptic horror stuff.
Yeah. You take the blood of the young and be stronger. That's what that is. That might actually work. You know what I mean? Some of that stuff might actually work. I wouldn't be surprised.
It was actually an X-Files episode in the latest season. It was all about this, like draining the blood from the young and giving to the old.
It probably has some effects. It probably is like completely invigorating because they're filled with all sorts of like
the hormones.
Us olds are just filled with cytokines and all sorts of inflammatory molecules and grumpy molecules, and the young are filled with like invigorating molecules.
Yeah, like testosterone.
Like testosterone. Yeah, that's a good one.
We've been talking a lot about companies attacking short sellers recently.
Yes.
Apparently, Elon Musk called the employer of one of the short sellers on Twitter and threatened a lawsuit. So that guy the guy's handle was Montana Skeptic, who's pretty popular on Seeking Alpha and Twitter. So he deleted both accounts because, he didn't want to either lose his job or have his boss sued. And this guy was running money for a family office. Like, he was like a serious dude. He was like a trial lawyer for 30 years. And but he just, did the math. He looked at the SEC filings. He pointed out, what was actually going on with the company. He wasn't doing anything nefarious. But Elon Musk decided to take time out of his day, and from calling Thai boy rescuers pedophiles.
Well, don't call him Thai boy rescuers. That just sounds. You said that in the last podcast. If you want to make somebody not sound like a pedophile,
he's a rescuer. I say
there you
rescuer.
go. The diver who rescued the Thai boys.
So anyway, Elon Musk did this, which is just another sign that there's something seriously wrong at Tesla. I mean, you don't.
This is always a bad sign. This is always okay when they start attacking the short sellers. Yeah, it's getting close to the end because they can weather the short sellers until like the house of cards is collapsing and they're blaming anyone that seems to be the harbinger of doom.
Yes, I almost think that Elon Musk just wants to take down people with him at this point. Speaking of companies tending to underperform when they get to this point, there actually has been a study that I saw, and the results were that when companies take actions against short sellers, whether they be technical, like trying to restrict what shares can actually be sold short through moving things from margin accounts to cash accounts, or legal action or whatever, they've historically underperformed the market by 2% per month. So that's pretty big. That's a pretty big divergence. A really bad sign when you're taking on the shorts like this. Netflix, when there was like a lot of, there have been a lot of short stories on that for, I guess, 10 years. But 10 years ago, the CEO responded to the shorts not in an angry way, but in a just pointing out what the story is and how you guys are wrong and how you're not really seeing the big picture, like in a friendly way. And that stock's been doing really well, and people really respect the CEO for doing that.
Yes. In general, those of us that have been on the buy side really like it when companies seem honest and forthright, and they give you more data than they care to, and that increases our confidence in the company as a whole. So even if things aren't going great right this second, we'll stick with you for a long time.
Yes, we really do love that. When you think about it, when you're in the public markets, the amount of knowledge you have about any of these companies is really just the tip of the iceberg. You're just getting like a small little window into what that company's doing and what the situation actually is. There's all this secret stuff that they're not telling you. So you really have to rely on the management quite a bit, even with very large companies. So
I agree.
Trust is numero uno.
Yeah. If you have critics, who cares? I'm sure we have our critics, Max.
Everyone has critics.
Yes. And you know what? I'm not calling them up.
Maybe you should.
Not yet.
Well, look, the best way to silence critics is just to do well. It's not like, shorts can't alter the trajectory of an operating company, especially like a $50 or $60 billion one. It's like, if you do your job, if you sell your cars or whatever, you're going to do well and the shorts are going to burn.
Haters going to hate.
Yeah. And, guess what? I remember there were a lot of haters on Celgene early on before they got approval for Revlimid. They were like, "Oh my God, they're selling thalidomide. That's crazy." And they were talking about that for years. People were shorting the stock and shorting it, and instead of attacking the shorts, they just did a really good job, and they burned a lot of people. Just by doing good. And now someone from Celgene's running for Senate in New Jersey.
What else we got?
Probably we can wrap up just with a little discussion on GSK. They've decided to embrace the buzzwords and go with machine learning.
Oh, it's another. They're going to use AI.
Yes,
they're going to use AI for drug development.
Wonderful. Another combinatorics.
I like CombiChem, Max. I think it's neat.
It is neat.
And there've been some good people got better at CombiChem, so don't you rag on combinatorics.
No, combinatorics the company.
Oh.
It was this shady company from like 10
Well,
years
it's probably
ago.
they're named after the thing that I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
I maybe I'm diving too much into the medchem here. Combinatorics. Tell us about combinatorics, Max.
No, Combinatorics was just this company that was like, we have this in silico platform that can tell us which combination of drugs would work best in whatever disease. And, they might be, we might be able to find a stroke drug, add it to a cholesterol drug, and it will work really well in diabetes. That was basically their pitch.
Mm-hmm.
So they went public and it never really went anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
They did some trials. It was all kind of, oh, well, we're going to use a steroid and add this other drug for arthritis. Revolutionary.
Well, Celator did it. Celator got bought out.
Well, yeah, no, Celator was okay. Celator was a little different. They basically optimized a cancer regimen.
Yeah, they optimized the cancer regimen, put in a little liposome.
Yeah, but they weren't saying that they were going to revolutionize drug discovery with AI. They were pretty upfront about it. Like we're making it more.
They got 2 drugs.
Yeah.
That are already the standard of care, and just tweaked the ratios a little bit, and put it together in the same package, and got good data.
Yeah, it was wonderful. I liked them. I mean, even before they had the great data.
Yeah, me too.
So, but I mean, GSK is also. I mean, they decided to pay 23andMe $300 million for use of their gene data.
Okay, so let me put my big fat 2 cents in this, which is that I think there's probably a lot of interesting stuff in that data. I think it's a little bit creepy that a company can buy all the 23andMe data and have like all this genomic level stuff that they've been collecting from everyone. That's the thing that bothers me a little bit. And it's a little bit scary that they could just mine that crap. So there's a little bit of a privacy thing that rubs me the wrong way there. Number 2, there's probably some interesting crap in there. There's probably some interesting data. Yeah, I bet you there is. The tricky part with that is actually correlating with like medical records and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's the missing piece.
That's the missing piece. So maybe they've got some sort of trick there. Maybe they've bought that data, something. I got a partnership with.
Well, no, there are people selling that data. Mm-hmm. Like I remember Patient Fusion was selling their, they had like 8% of the GP market in terms of electronic health records.
Yeah,
but everything was
people
anonymized,
have this, and so they got to correlate it with something like that.
Yeah, but they can't because they won't be able to match the identity of both records. So they're going to have some data, and it's going to be interesting. I mean, maybe they'll understand population sizes a little bit better, or maybe I don't know, some sort of tendency or whatever. But
yeah, and there's probably some biomarkers out there. But I mean, what overwhelmingly shows up is that like, oh yeah, there's like 30. Like you look for like some magic bullet, and really, unless you're looking at some genetic disease, like a liposomal storage disorder or something like that, you've got like 20, 30 biomarkers, right, that are all going to be different and all be contributing some small fraction. And then it's a combination of how many of those you have, yada, 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 that none of those things actually end up translating into a drug, right? This is why these genetic diseases, now that we have like enzyme replacements and we're moving into gene therapies, are very like targetable with this, because you just fix one thing or you just drug one thing and you're good to go. But finding out like if MS has a genetic basis and what it is, and finding something to target that, or Parkinson's or whatever, it's just going to be a mess.
I'm really not that worried about what they're going to do in the data. I don't think we're going to turn into Gattaca world or something like that, where corporations have our genetic data and judge us by it or something like that. Mm-hmm. Because there really isn't that much they're going to be able to do with the data. So I did not 23andMe, I did Ancestry DNA. Mm-hmm. And so I got that raw data and put it through this other service called Prometheus, which was really useful, by the way. And it showed, like, for all the kind of like different SNPs and whatever I had, what the research is saying about what they all mean. So it was nice. But what you get from it is, oh, you have a 20% higher risk than normal for developing some thyroid disease, or it could be double or 3 times, but the underlying risk is 0.1%. Mm-hmm. And so it's not. it shows tendencies but not answers, which was kind of what you're saying. It's not like it's saying, oh, you're missing this enzyme and that's why you have this horrible disease.
Yeah, and what are you going to drug? What are you going to drug in that? You know what I mean? There's nothing there. So yes, okay. So maybe I'm going to caveat it. Maybe they'll strike gold. It's possible. It's technically possible, but it just seems a bit far-fetched, and I hate everyone is sprinkling AI. It's like the new Internet of Things, where everyone is doing AI now, and I want them to stop.
Well, I'd really like to stop working on Wall Street. You know, all the algorithms are running this market.
The algorithms are evidently not doing as well. Did you hear that?
Well, yeah, the quant funds aren't doing as well.
Yeah.
But they dominate. I think they're like 80% of trading or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Which is
all
a
the
crazy
high
amount.
frequency stuff.
Yeah, a lot of it is high
But
frequency.
whenever you put in an order, like there's like 3 more orders from these guys.
Yeah, but I mean, they're the ones who caused the flash crash.
Yes.
I mean, that was really scary. I mean, things were just like falling off a cliff for no reason, just because of this weird thing with S&P futures.
The crazy thing, and this is how Skynet happens, right? It doesn't happen with searching for mutations to cure Parkinson's or something. It happens because the algos are, by definition now, the AI has got emergent behavior, right? They start doing things for reasons that you don't fully understand. And they're all going to get to know each other because they're all the biggest traders, right? So all of the artificial intelligences are going to learn what all the other artificial intelligences are trading. And then they're all going to trade together. And we'll all become irrelevant, and they'll take over the world.
So basically, we'll have like this massive AI Stevie Cohen manipulating the markets.
Yeah, so they'll just manipulate the markets for each other and then all pat each other on the back like, ooh, we're all doing great because they've all just landed on the same strategy, right?
Oh, so well, actually, how is that different from today?
It's not. You're right. It really is the same. And the bankers still run everything.
So I guess just, let us worship our robotic corporate overlords.
I, for one, welcome them.
Oh, speaking of, AI going crazy, though, wasn't it like Microsoft that created some AI-based Twitter account, and it took it like 24 hours to go from like friendly to neo-Nazi?
Yes, that's right. It was supposed to sound like a 14-year-old girl, and she started leaning neo-Nazi pretty quick.
It was pretty funny. It was based on what people were telling her and other things happening on the internet. It was.
I've actually read a really interesting paper. I'm interested in this AI stuff, so I'm not completely ignorant and just talking out of my ass here, just a little bit. But I actually read a very interesting paper about how it's really hard not to make racist AI, right? AI tends to lean racist because it's just learning from us and sort of distilling out trends. And so it distills out racism like pretty much all the time. Like when you just compare like which of these two people is prettier, it gets real ugly really fast. And how they actually have to develop strategies to try and keep their AI from being racist. This is a thing. This is an area of active research.
Maybe we should limit it to hot dog, not hot dog.
Well, we were totally glossing over the fact that the CEO of Gilead fired.
Oh, yeah. And the chairman.
And the chairman.
At the same time.
And my theory, I like the idea of people bowing out gracefully. And they just decided, you know what? It's been a good run. We are super duper duper rich. I like to go spend some time at the beach. And they just leave.
Because honestly, I can't imagine it being terribly fun running Gilead right now. I mean, it's always more fun managing the rise of a civilization or an empire than the decline. And
oh, come on, give them a break, Max.
It's not their fault. They just had this tremendously successful franchise, HCV, that now is declining.
They've got piles of cash. They'll make something.
They have a lot of debt now, too.
Yes, but
what are they going to do?
They get that really cheap. They get really cheap debt.
I understand they have cheap debt. I'm not saying they're going to go bankrupt, but okay, their HIV franchise is also kind of like, it's not really growing that much. And then the HCV's, falling off a cliff.
Okay, it's going pretty good.
When you do the math on what they can do to actually turn around the ship, there's nothing that they can do in the near to medium term.
Well, to outperform Sovaldi, etc., no. There's nothing they can do to be that good right now. But they got all that money from that.
No, I know that. So they're going to have to spend a good 5 to 10 years investing in different things before they really start becoming a high flyer again. And so that's, first of all, that's a lot of work. And it's just, for probably the next couple of years, their earnings releases are going to be depressing, and they're going to be battered by their investors like, what are you going to buy? What are you going to buy?
There's some point in which the potential rate of return here makes it definitely worth it. I mean, and I don't know where that is off the top of my head, but I like the idea of good companies continuing to be good, and they're a good company.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're a bad company. It's just they're a declining company because they did a great thing. They cured a disease, and they do it relatively cheaply. I know there was like all this hoopla about their price, but right now, I think it costs like $30,000 to cure HCV. I mean, my God, people are paying what, $200,000 to get like 2 months more life with cancer drugs. I mean, this is a great deal, but unfortunately, they made so much money. People don't even know how to value stocks that are declining. They're always used to growth or at least stability, and that's not what we're.
There is uncertainty there, but as far as the CEO and the chairman are concerned, good for them. I hope you enjoy the rest of your lives rolling around and swimming in your pools of money, and enjoy the beach.
Well, it's always possible they were forced out too.
That's possible. Maybe the rest of the board just got impatient.
Yeah.
Why haven't you done more of these killer deals? Like now the stock market is, we're in a bubble. You had 2015 and 2016. You could have bought something cheaper.
Well, they bought Kite for $12 billion. Yeah. They'll never make money on that one.
I don't know. I haven't run the numbers, but
You actually did run the numbers.
well, I ran the numbers for DLBCL before, and I was like, yeah, you can't justify it with this. The reason why all these guys are getting into CAR T is not because of the money they're going to make right now, because they're not going to make the money back on that. It's because they need the next platform. They need the monoclonal antibodies of the 2020s.
I don't think CAR T's it, though. At least not the way they're doing it.
Yeah,
I mean, they're kind of in the chimeric monoclonal antibody state right now with Kite.
it might cure multiple myeloma, Max.
But
That's where the
or CAR T.
The CAR T cures it, man. It might.
In some patients, but the problem with CAR T is there's a lot less IP around it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Everyone and their cousin has a CAR T company. It's all manufacturing. It's all just having that plant that can handle it.
Also, it's about the finding hospitals who can handle it. I mean, it's kind of a complicated issue. I did a KOL call on it, and I mean, you have to have several specialists involved with these patients. I mean, not just an oncologist, but you need like a neurologist. You need, all these different specialties because of all the, what happens when they have a cytokine storm.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really for the faint of heart. I mean, probably most teaching hospitals and large community hospitals can handle it. But still, I would think that would tax resources and limit how much throughput they could actually get through any of these centers, especially the communities.
And I'm really sketchy about any sort of solid tumors being treated with CAR T. But I might be proven wrong in the future on that. It's just everyone's been looking for like these really specific like tumor epitopes forever.
Yeah, it has to be really specific. I mean, there's very few kind of organs that you can do without.
Ironically, your immune system, you can just get rid of, or at least your B cells. If you have a B cell tumor, you just totally live without them, which is ironic because they make you antibodies and stuff. They're not that important, I guess. You can't live without the T cells. But that's one of the things Autolus is working on right now. They've got a treatment that can kill off like some of your T cells.
They're very interesting, and who knows? I mean, they might make the value of Kite much lower than it is today if their stuff works. That's kind of my point. Like, Gilead buy Kite, but what are they going to get for it, really, for their $12 billion?
Yeah. Well, Novartis was wise enough to get their drug approved or their CAR T approved and then completely ditch cell therapy altogether. They're like, all right, it's not worth it, guys.
Novartis is ditching quite a bit now. I think they ditched their antibiotics as well.
Well, yeah. Have you seen what the approval process has been looking like for antibiotics?
No, I know. It's a mess.
It's a total mess. And you said it best. What was it? That it's the better your drug is, the less people use it when it's an antibiotic?
Exactly. They want to save it for the last line. So, I mean, all these guys are like, so we're going to spend how much in our clinical trials to become a fourth line agent? And it's not like pricing can be stupendously high with those either.
All right, what else we got?
No, I think that's it for me.
All right, I guess that's it for me.
Hey, thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to subscribe to Armchair Healthcare.
All right, later, guys.
Bye.
Our theme music is by Hazar.